So this is one of my PhD research, applying big data governance. So how to apply this big data governance to what we propose, digital twin on smart and sustainable tourism. So my PhD overall is about sustainable tourism in the digital age. What's the role of big data, emerging technologies, and governance? I work at the Department of Governance and Innovation at Campus Friesland in Leeuwarden, the Netherlands. And I work with Andre, and another supervisor is Daniel Vetosa. He's working at Faculty of Science and Engineering of University of Groningen. So what I would like to present today is like, we propose three things or three concepts actually, conceptual frameworks. The first one is how we can promote or propose digital twin for smart and sustainable tourism, and then how to govern the system through the big data governance, and what is and we implement decision framework for architectural decisions as one of the tools to govern the system and the big data and digital technologies. I give you some illustrations. For example, like Malaga in Spain in 2020 has been awarded as the European Capital of Smart Tourism Initiative. They are using LED for more safe energy. And they also installed smart watering system, for example, introduce air quality sectoral plan to reduce air pollutions and improve the noise quality. And yeah, they won this award in 2020. Lyon, another city in French, they won this award in 2019 by providing many facilities to help people with disabilities. Like when they have problems with impairment, for example, they provide some tools in some museums so they can touch the arts and get some information about it through the verbal informations. And they also provide many free public transport card, for example, free entrance to 23 museums, other attractions, discounts, and more. What about the Netherlands? Netherlands have Breda, one of the city in the south. It has an award as European Capital of Smart Tourism Award in category of accessibility. So they provide some special stand for people with disability, and also the route maps in Braille for people who cannot really see. And they put some iconic animations lighting LED in some fundamental or iconic buildings, historical buildings in the city with LED as well. So it's like more saving energy. So based on those examples, we could, I'm sure that almost all of you already understand about the smart tourism, the smart cities, how the smart tourism is actually a part of the smart city, how to combine the technology to support sustainability. So my research is like how to, like to see how the big data, for example, to be more focused, how the big data can be leveraged into supporting sustainable tourism. And as the background, I'm coming from Indonesia. Before I do my PhD, I work at the Statistic Office in Indonesia. And in Indonesia, we are using mobile positioning data to measure the foreigners from some border areas. So Indonesia is one of the countries, Indonesia and Estonia, has been using this MPD as the official tourism statistic products. Many countries try to do the analysis of the MPD, but they have not yet published this MPD data as an official statistic product. So why Indonesia and Estonia can do this? And then, however, like last year, I did a field work, try to find what are the issues and challenges in terms of providing this MPD, in terms of big data governance. And we try to promote the idea of leveraging this MPD or another big data sources into digital twin for smart and sustainable tourism. Because digital twin is now becoming quite emerging topic in many areas, but there is a gap, or maybe there is no proposition how this digital twin can be implemented to support tourism sector, for example. On the other hand, MPD has many advantages, because when we are using this MPD, we can analyze the movement of the people. We could see numbers of the people. the volumes and from where to where when they're visiting. So in terms of sustainability, we could really expect it helps to reduce our tourism, to mitigate many negative risks because of the tourism sector. So, and also to provide decision-making, information for decision-making, like provide the infrastructures and also facility and also branding, marketing, and competitiveness of a place, for example. In 2020, I did a literature review on the use of big data for sustainable tourism, and we could see that there are so many potential of the use of big data for sustainable tourism. For example, like the data of communication system, financial transactions, using the apps or using the tools, using the sensors, weather or climate data, and geotech photos. However, when I did this fieldwork to Indonesia, I mean, like NPD has been using quite, let's say it's quite successful. However, in the middle of the process itself, there are so many challenges regarding the lack of regulations, the lack of law, and also there are some issues about the privacy because Indonesia didn't have at the time data personal law or data personal protections. So the problem is when we want to use this data into a digital twin, how can we assess, how can we address the governance system to achieve the objective and ensure that it's ethical and it's address all of the objectives. Before going to that issues, so this is the conceptual framework that we propose for the use of big data for smart and sustainable tourism. I was adapting this framework from Van et al. And implemented this framework for digital twin for the smart cities. So in the bottom or in the lower level, that's the big data sources. So our proposition for now is to use mobile positioning data, but we can replace these big data sources with other big data, potential big data sources. And then we go to the data management and the sense making and then decision making, because digital twin is not an easy technology to realize because it needs a very high infrastructure, for example, and also the real-time data should support the twinning itself and using the sensors, using the cloud, using the computing. So there are many challenges actually to realize this digital twin for smart sustainable tourism. However, I would like to propose that there is a big potential with this technology to support decision-making for smart and sustainable tourism. So this is architectural synthesis for DT on smart and sustainable tourism. As DT, we have the physical environment, and we also have this virtual environment, how they connect each other and how the data supply from the physical into the virtual environment, and there's a loop and for decision-making and also for to achieve the objectives. However, again, there are some risks and challenges. Of course, there are issues on cyber threats and risks associated with digitalization notifications. And the software system or software architect and software engineer should also interpret the law and the regulations as one of the requirements of the software system. But then there's a lackness of capacity or capabilities for doing this function. And then there's also some issues related to the privacy, network, and power attributes in digital governance, and ability to understand the values, needs, norms, and regulation of each organization. So it leads into some ethics on software architecture. When we talk about the ethics on software architecture or software engineer, we are talking about how the software architect or software engineers try to realize that this product has benefits to the society. It has, it has impact to sustainability. So we talk about software sustainability and sustainability software. So like inward and outward looking of a software itself. However, there is a gap, like how to address these issues actually, because to address these ethics, there are several ethical decisions should be created. The first of all, software architects, software engineers should understand what are the ethical awareness and also how to identify relevant stakeholders, what are the values and recognize the relations among the stakeholders, and try to identify these ethical issues during the design process. Somehow it's a little bit overburdened. It's quite challenging, especially for Indonesia. When I did this fieldwork, I could see that there's a gap of communication between the data scientist, data analyst, a business analyst, legal person, supervisor, and also data provider, for example. So many stakeholders are related to develop this MPD. However, when I did the interview, I attend one of the online interview at the time, online meeting, because there was a COVID thing, so I still have a problem with meeting offline at the time. So we could see that there is no clear decision documentations when they want to make a decision in terms of the architecture or digital technologies. So I propose to use or to implement the big data governance to help the organization solve these kind of issues. So big data governance, because you're using the MPD, and then a lot of stakeholders come to Statistics Indonesia, and then they said like, hey, can you do this? This MPD is really good. Can you implement this data not only for tourism, but also for other purpose, for example, maybe for disaster management, to measure metropolitan statistic area, to see the people mobility in the urban area. So they try to adapt or try to receive these, let's say, requests. However, there are some problems that are missing in terms of law regulations, in terms of the process, in terms of decision making. So at the end, in the fourth year, because MPD has been started in 2016, but when I did this interview in 2021, 2022, there are some issues, some problems coming up because the planning and the governance and the management in the beginning was not mature enough. So it really having or becoming a threat to the data sustainability, because, okay, this idea is really good, but when we cannot govern the system and ensure the sustainability, then it's becoming a threat for the problems in some extent. However, based on our research, they don't have this big data governance framework. Not so many institutions having big data governance framework to help to see a very comprehensive perspective, comprehensive view to utilize the big data. So we try to come with a framework based on this MPD analysis, because MPD is very complex. MPD is, I mean, like compared to another big data sources, I would like to say that hopefully by trying to analyze the MPD, we could also implement this framework into different big data sources, which is probably a little bit more or less complex compared to the MPD. There are two opinions in Statistics Office, not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries. Is the big data a part of traditional statistics or not? Because traditional statistics saying like it should be sample, it should be census, it should be survey. Big data, it's unstructured. It's like a lot of noises, and we cannot use this data for official product, through official statistics product. So there are two arguments. However, in the global level, United Nations Big Data Organization, for example, they promote to use the big data for modernizations of the statistical office. Because now, when we try to do data collection using traditional method, a lot of problems. People don't want to answer your questions. A long list questions to answer to analyze the poverty level, unemployment level. But then when people come, you knock the door, and then they say like, no, I don't have time to answer your questions. Also to measure the GDP. Traditionally, you have to go to each enterprises, SNAs, all kind of samples, and try to give a very complex questionnaire or survey, and then it's a burden for them. They don't understand the methodology or the concept of this questionnaire, and then they said like, no, we don't want to answer. We cannot answer this questionnaire. So United Nations actually try to promote the use of big data for modernizing the tourism or modernizing the statistic office. So this is the framework that we try to promote. The objective is to generate value from the big data for a better, agile, responsive, and up-to-date official statistic. We divide it into, or we promote the dimensions, principles, strategies, and components. What what is different from this framework from other frameworks that we try to promote the policy and standard setting, stakeholder engagement, research ethic, and ethical and legal compliance into this framework, which is still not becoming concern from the Statistic Office previously, based on our interview, based on our research, based on our data document analysis. So we try to promote this framework to help the Statistic Office to, when they want to use the big data for official statistic, then it's becoming more mature and better organized or managed. To provide or to produce the statistical product, actually every statistic office should follow this life cycle. Specify needs, design, build, collect, process, analyze, disseminate, and evaluate. However, there is a problem in specify needs and design. It's always, or it's mostly mixed. So they just jump up into build because, okay, this is a very good innovations. Let's develop, let's use this data. But in the specify needs, the stakeholders missed to really analyze why we have to use this data, and also what are the issues or challenges related to the law and regulation, for example. On a matter of fact, actually, UN Fundamental Principle of Official Statistics also introduced the professional ethics, professional standard, and scientific principles as one of its fundamental principles. So what we promote next, so to help this organization or to help this digital technology to achieve the goals, so we try to apply the big data governance. Okay, back again, that we are trying to promote this digital twin for smart and sustainable tourism, how to govern this digital technology using 3 steps. Hopefully, by applying these 3 steps, we could address the issues and the challenges regarding this governing digital system. The first of all is we identify the stakeholders, and then we try to identify the law and regulations, and we promote to use documentation framework for architecture decisions, which is adapted from the international standard for description system and software architecture. Because to understand the stakeholders for the software architect, software engineer is really important. And software engineers, software architects also have to hear what their needs, what their opinions, and what their proposals through software architecture. And we also try to promote or define law and regulations identifications, non-technological and technological. For example, like when you want to implement this digital technology or digital twin, what should be adapted? What kind of law that we have to comply by this system? So first of all is National Code of the Good Practice of Official Statistics, and addressing the GDPR, because we still use the technical expert from Estonia. So the data and also have to comply with the GDPR. And we have to ensure that this digital twin, when we use this MPD or using another big data, is comply with personal data privacy regulations, which is we just have regulated last year. And another law and regulation should be followed is the contract between BPS and other data provider, for example, and standard operating procedures or project lifecycle management. Technologically, the examples of law and regulations should be compliance is terms of use, code, the architectures, and architecture viewpoint. So how to implement this? We are using decision details viewpoint. So when software engineers want to make a decision, we want to implement, we want to put these decisions into a very clear and concise decision detail viewpoints. Consists of the name, what is decision at the step, what are the activities, what's the issues, what's the alternatives, why, what's the arguments, what's the related decisions, governing systems, and decision makers. So this is, for example, the implementations. We choose 3 decisions for our conceptual framework because if you want to develop all decisions, would be very, very wide. So we choose 3 decisions only, which is very basic and very fundamental. First of all, do we want to use MPD or not? Why we want to use MPD? If we don't want to use MPD, is there any alternative? So that's going to be the decision one. Based on the analysis, because I work with one of the colleague back at home, and then, okay, we want to use the MPD. So what are the issues? What are the alternative and the arguments and related decisions on using this MPD? The second decision is we have to improve the MPD script, because MPD has been used since 2016, developed by the technical expert position in Estonia. However, after a few years, based on the algorithm, based on our analysis, there are some likenesses. So we want to improve this MPD script through with another alternative. And then this is the decision relationship viewpoint, and using standard operating procedures. For example, like these 3 decisions, we make decision 1 related to the decision 2, decision 2 also related to decision 3. So based on this decision relationship viewpoint, we could really see how one decision could lead to another decisions and what are the alternatives. So based on this viewpoint, we really hope that we could give a very comprehensive overview when we want to provide decisions in software architecture. So this is standard operating procedures. So we identify all the stakeholders, and for example, like, okay, we want to use the MPD. Who are the stakeholders? We have to involve the subject matter, or people who work in tourism statistics, and also the business analyst. We have to involve the legal person. We have to involve the supervisor. We have to involve the people from data provider who provide the MPD, data engineers from the MNO or data provider itself. So based on this SOP or standard operating procedures, we try to see how they communicate, who communicate with who, and what are the challenges in terms of this making decisions, and what are the law and regulation should be comply. This is the relationship between decision framework with this big data governance. So we hope that the benefits of the DFID actually by implementing this decision framework, we could support the transparency and accountability for architecture decisions. To provide or to produce the official tourism statistic, for example, or any kind of statistic, any kind of official statistic. In Indonesia, we have we should be accountable because it has been checked by the accountability or some agency that really check the quality, check the decision that they have. So we really hope that by providing or implementing this DFID, it helps our decision-making becoming more accountable and transparent, and also to assist the compliance of law and regulations, because the problem is when we develop a software system, how to comply with law and regulations, mitigate any potential risk, address ethical concerns, address the dimensions of big data governance framework. However, there are some challenges. There are some overburden for the IT stakeholders because it's quite complex, because based on the interview, it's also quite complex. So we try to make it more simple, especially when we try to develop these standard operating procedures. It's quite complex. Probably it's going to be time consuming, and also we need a new human resources to arrange these implementations. So probably we want to implement, or we want to involve the business analysts and also the people from the legal person. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. Don't know if you have any questions, comments. Yeah.
Very interesting presentation. It's not a question, but more I would like to know about the term accountability. I think it's very hard to define it when it comes to projects where you have multiple stakeholders, and then you have, let's say, developers, who are more forward in developing the whole prototype, which is then later to be used. So in a case, where there are some ethical concerns regarding the applications or devices, who is accountable? Because, if I'm a developer, I'm making something, for me, the priority would be to get that thing done in the right way. But then the concerns or the values that can be added, they differ based on different stakeholders. And I think it's impossible to put everything from a practical point of view. So I know it's still a very open question, but what do you think about the accountability in this context?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. That's really true, because there are so many miscommunications between the stakeholders. For example, like the data analyst one, or the subject matter, let's say, for people who work for the tourism statistic, they want to do this, but then it's not implemented very well with the, let's say, the people who develop the software. So actually accountability here, we try to promote what is the mechanism of the communications. So for example, like when we goes to this during the field work, they still use several meetings to achieve the consensus, to achieve whether we want to deliver this level of quality or not. For example, like when they want to improve the script of the MPD, there are big discussions how to improve this MPD script. First of all, there's a problem in terms of timing, because this data should be delivered every month in the beginning of the month. However, the data provider just gave the data processing or the data results only 10 or 15 minutes, or 10 or 15 days before the press release, for example. So there's a very big problems to deliver this improving script, for example. So maybe it's a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit challenging, but again, this communication through there are several communication tools. In Indonesia, people still using WhatsApp group, for example. So they will have 2 or 3 WhatsApp groups. For example, like there's only one group, only data scientists, another group with almost all stakeholders. So with the data scientists, they just discuss everything very technical that probably cannot really understand by people who has no background or understanding of technology. However, the result of this discussion then will be brought to this bigger group or WhatsApp, and then they will bring it to the bigger main meeting, which is happening once a month, probably, or every 2 months. And at the end of the year, and people from this, let's say, from this agency who check all this accountability will come to this office, Statistic Office, Ministry of Tourism. They will ask, why do you choose these decisions? What's the reasons behind this? Is there any documentations of these decisions? And people say like, oh no, it's just an outline of the meeting. So, and then it's becoming a problem because that's not accountable. And then, oh, I just remember on that meeting, we have these decisions. So probably that's why I try to promote this framework like decision detail viewpoint. So it could be more accountable, because you could really track each decisions, the reasons behind that, the alternatives, and when something wrong, they can trace back what's wrong and in which part and which decision. So yeah, so we try to fill that gap actually. Yeah. But that's a challenge. Yeah.
Any other question? So I have a comment. Yeah, it's more a question.
Question.
Not this kind of architecture. I have many issues with this architecture confusion. Well, I have two actually. One are at a higher level regarding the approach towards digital twins of tourism, because at the end, it's a very as well like problematic term, the use of digital twin and what they mean by digital twins applied to tourism, which is their goal. So it's first of all a question for you, like which is the scope of how you were defining digital twins applied to tourism, based on goals, based on scope, based on like operational capabilities.
Yeah.
Second thing, the framework that you were proposing, if it's kind of like multi-purpose, so it should be able to address any possible reasonable requirements regarding digital twins for tourism. That would be one question. A second thing regarding the regulations and the concerns that you were mentioning. I understand that this framework that you are proposing should be as well like should be able to operate at any scope, any legal framework, any location, because as well as you were saying, like some of the things that you were doing about saying about Indonesia in this particular case of this data, you have, and I've seen that as well, like here in Europe, some people from, I won't say the name, but a cell phone company testing or like proofing, showcasing some business cases with super interesting insights from mobile phone data.
Yeah.
And then it arrives that, okay, yeah, and then there a lawyer here within the GDPR domain saying like, okay, very interesting. First of all, where were you doing that? It was the case that it was Asia, Southeast Asia, somewhere, I don't know the country.
Yeah.
Second thing, you know that 90% of the things that you were saying they were completely illegal in Europe. It's not even not question. No, it's illegal. It's like non-legal use of all this data.
Yeah.
So yeah, the question would be like this framework should be flexible enough for working in any like legal domain or legal regulation.
First of all, for the first questions, thank you. So this, in terms of sustainable tourism or tourism sector, there is, until now, as I understand, there is no literature or ideas about promoting digital twin for smart and sustainable tourism. On the other hand, so that's why actually these propositions is as an idea, maybe a very, like a very basic idea for this tourism practitioner to, there are so many tools or apps already on smart tourism, sustainable tourism. However, because digital twin already becoming an emerging ideas in certain fields, so hopefully this idea could be understand or could be listened or could be read by other tourism practitioners, and they try to probably to implement this by using the big data sources that they have. Of course, it's quite challenging because as I mentioned before, there are some problems to develop this digital twin. It's not as easy as we propose. It's not cheap, it's quite expensive and also time consuming. And also, of course, there's, like we have to ensure data sustainability because the data should be sent real time from physical to this virtual and then back and forth looping. Probably there could be a prototype. So that's what I thought, like if I have, I don't know, in the future, probably we could run the prototype of digital twin by using a small scale of data, for example, or technology, using virtual reality or maybe web applications to try out whether it is feasible or not, and then bring it up into a higher level. Because when I brought this idea to Statistic Office, yes, they want to develop this MPD to leverage this data into a higher level, use the IoT machine learning. They are so, they're quite, let's say, intrigued by the ideas. But then again, how to execute this? Who are the stakeholders? Because this MPD, for example, they use by many ministries, many stakeholders, not only for the tourism, but also other purposes. Related to the second questions about this is illegal in Europe. Not funny, but it's interesting thing. Like last month, I attended one of the meetings of the European Commissions, and they want to promote the use of mobile positioning data in certain countries as a pilot project in Europe, because it's, I mean, like when they want to develop this MPD into tourism analysis and like other purposes, then this framework into about law and regulations compliance should be adopted or should be implemented. Why? Because it's illegal, but then why they urge to really implement this? I still have to looking up into this project or this proposition, of course, like what are the fundamental or what are the opinions or the basic reasons to use this. Because if I'm not mistaken, in the Netherlands, they did or have done pilot project about the the MPD, but it's not becoming official statistic. And they got some sue from some providers because of legal reasons or GDPR. However, if you want to compare about the cost in Indonesia, MPD is very expensive. Each ministries pay to the data provider for the same data, but then the provider said like, okay, I sell it independently, but it's very, very expensive. I don't know, like 5 million euros probably, or
for the whole tracking of the country.
Yes, country, and I mean, like it's quite expensive. In terms of in terms of integrity of the data, we try to promote in higher level. What if one coordinator ministry coordinate to data collections and then spread this data? But again, people now becoming concerned about data privacy. People in Indonesia now start concerning like, hey, that's my data. How can you do my data for analysis without my permission? So we should address these ethical failures. I mean, like, yes, it's feasible. Yes, it's innovative. But then we also think about people. That's the ethics coming for the software architect or software engineers. So yeah, so I have to check again for the second questions, because what kind of law or what kind of regulations as the basis why these European Commissions want to use this MPD as a pilot project in several countries. I think the pilot project between 4 or 5 countries.